So just in terms of my own presentation this evening, I wanted firstly to introduce the SFA to you, to talk a little bit about small business in Ireland, what are the priorities, what are keeping people awake at night. Then I'm going to share with you our economic forecast in terms of what we see ahead, but more importantly what that actually means for you as businesses. I'm going to briefly touch on the fiscal treaty referendum and the importance of a yes vote in that. And the main bulk of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how to manage better in challenging times, and in particular how by boosting employee productivity you can deliver more value to your customers and hence improve your bottom line. So in terms of the SFA, we are a national organisation set up as the voice of small business 40 years ago, and that really is still what we're actively doing day to day, is by creating a better environment for you all to do business. And that's particularly important at the moment. So we're working with government, with the advisory group in small business, and directly with meetings with ministers and civil servants in the EU and the Troika and everyone else to make sure they hear our voice. We also deliver excellent business advice. Many members are here this evening already. Day-to-day issues like how to solve employee issues, how to deal with the revenue, how to deal with your banks, whatever it might be, we're here to help, and that is our promise to you. And also by developing connections for members. So I think it's really important, nights like tonight, to get to meet local business people. You may be able to do business with each other, but you can at least learn from each other as well in terms of how to approach and tackle particular issues. So in terms of Ireland, we are still a nation of small business. We have 200,000 businesses, and 98% of all of those are small, which basically means they employ less than 50 people. 93% have less than 10 employees, so beneath all the job announcements, it's the ones and twos and threes in all of these companies that really are keeping the economy going, and that's why it's so critically important that government policy starts there. But in total employment terms, we employ a staggering 655,000 people. That's half the private sector workforce. And increasingly, I think it's really positive that despite the recession, we're still seeing 1,000 people decide to take the risk and set up by themselves to become entrepreneurs each month. And throughout the Better Business Show over the last 2 weeks, we've had the pleasure of meeting many companies who've only set up in the last couple of years around the country. And it's really incredible, the stories that people are doing really well, again, even in a difficult trading environment. We surveyed our members at the start of this year in terms of what were their key priorities this year, and unsurprisingly, reducing business costs is still uppermost in people's minds. People are looking for value in terms of their input costs, in terms of their labour costs, and in particular the costs that are outside their control are our top priority, working at a national level, working on things like regulatory burden, the cost of licences, stealth taxes, commercial rates, all of those things that you have to really just accept and take that the government levy on you. So we're hoping to progress those issues this year. But secondly, I think people now are looking much more towards how can they actually improve productivity and performance levels to actually get them to the next level. So they're building the growth equation into their business, which is very, very important. They're looking to access new markets and to deliver new products, services, to become more innovative. And they're all critical, I think, to future success. But also at the bottom there, you'll see that still people are looking at restructuring and their businesses being a priority, and that's 27% of members. So if you take a rough ballpark, 3/4 of businesses are telling us that broadly speaking they're doing reasonably well, albeit that most of the time they're not telling people publicly that they're doing well, and that's an issue in and of itself. But that still for about 1/4 of all businesses things are tough, and they're trying to maintain their businesses, restructure, make sure they have the finance in place to continue working. So in terms of the economic outlook, I know these charts are always very scary for people, but it basically, in summary, tells us that we have two economies going on here at the moment. One is the exporting story, which is phenomenally impressive in terms of particularly our net export agenda. A lot of that is foreign direct investment, but much more of it now is coming from our own Irish Indigenous entrepreneurs, and we need to increase that. And that's why it's very important that the government have now set up the Potential Exporters Division in Enterprise Ireland, which means that anyone already in business here who's trading well in the local economy, who wants to think about exporting, now has somewhere to go. So it's not all about high potentials anymore. So if you do want to think about that, then certainly there's now a resource open to you, which is great. But in terms of the domestic economy, it's still very, very difficult, and that's in particular due to the absolute collapse in terms of consumer confidence and demand. And one of the two positive messages that I can give you around that is that firstly, more recently, all of the sentiment surveys have shown a slight improvement, but in particular, people's gross disposable income has stopped falling. Even with the recent tax increases, people's disposable income is only down 0.5%, which means that anyone in a job actually is quite well off. And the difficulty is that we have to persuade them how to spend that money. So they're currently saving between 13 and 15%, where for an economy like ours, the savings rate should be around 5%. So we need to shift that risk assessment back and try and promote more consumer confidence. And that's my challenge to all of you here as business leaders, that really we need to start communicating positive messages where we can, because it's by you leading from the front in your businesses, your employees gaining confidence, that then the broader consumers will actually start to spend again. We can't continue to be all negative, and that's, I think, powerful message that we're really setting out in the shows this year. But in particular also, you'll see the investment figure on the third line there, which has been very negative for the last number of years, will turn positive next year. And that's for two reasons, essentially. In terms of our economic analysis, the spare capacity that was in place in most businesses is now being used up, but also in terms of people's investment in terms of plant, machinery, fleets, etc. The maintenance cost of maintaining old standards will actually be greater now than actually purchasing new ones. So we do see investment levels both in terms of the private sector and the government sector increasing next year, and therefore giving a positive boost to the economy, which means that we will see GNP growth as well next year. So it is still, I think, difficult. We're aware of that, but I think there's certainly some room for opportunity, and certainly some businesses are doing tremendously well. So I think that's something for us all to aspire to. Having said all that, in terms of the economic indicators, we see every time that there's a Eurozone crisis and a Eurozone shock that people postpone investment decisions and things stop again. And really that's why we're asking people to vote yes in the treaty, because we need stability. We don't think this is going to be a panacea, but it's certainly one step on the road. And I think it's very important, not just for you all to vote yes, but we need business champions in this time out. We need you to go and talk to your employees, talk to your customers, and build this into your daily conversation, because otherwise it's not going to pass. And I think certainly, from anyone's basic perspective, we need access to the European Stability Mechanism to provide us with the second bailout funds if they're necessary, and the bond markets won't let us back in until they're happy that that is also there. So our best hope of regaining control of our own affairs is by passing this treaty, and we'll have a whole series of video interviews with member companies launching over the next week, outlining what it actually practically means for them and their business. So I'd encourage you to check those out. But again, if anyone would like to help us out in the campaign, I'd be delighted to hear from you. So just in terms of managing in challenging times, if you look at the chart here, I'll start at the right and work my way back. Essentially, I'm just trying to demonstrate to you that profitability and growth in every business really primarily is stimulated by customer loyalty. And if you look, in most cases, a lot of our attention is just about attracting new customers, but we know that maintaining and selling more to existing ones is actually a lot more profitable. In terms of customer loyalty, that arises from having satisfied customers. And customers are only satisfied if they think they're getting value, and that's not just monetary, that's in terms of service levels and everything else. And that really is about your employees. And I think quite often owner managers are concerned with themselves doing a good job, but if you're not bringing your workforce with you, then you're having an underlying issue with regard to productivity and performance. So I think there's a lot of good wins you can get in this area by focusing in on employee satisfaction. What happens during recessions? Well, things stop generally, so people just cut unnecessary perceived investment in things like recruitment, training, R&D, advertising, marketing. Things change because they have to, and quite often you're just trying to balance your cash flows, and that's accepted. But I think the thing that's not acceptable and that's really been damaging from a lot of the companies that I've been speaking to is the fact that communication has stopped as well, because people are too afraid to tackle the issues. And in particular, I think this is the key advice for any business that's doing really well at the moment. It's about engaging staff, being very transparent. If things are not good, sharing business information. And I think you can share more information often than you think, and that's how you get people's buy-in to come along with you. So if we look at it in terms of a flow, what's happening at the moment, what we're seeing daily, is that worsening results mean that management warn that there's change in the way. That creates ambiguity and uncertainty. The longer it lasts, the worse it gets. Individuals become more anxious. They spend more time thinking about, will I have a job? Should I increase my savings? Should I stop spending? Than actually doing their job. And also you get increased absenteeism, which we're also seeing. And then you have lower productivity, which in turn creates worsening results. So in terms of the three things that I would say to you to do, and again, this is based on analysis from our member companies, which we deal with day in, day out, particularly on HR and labour matters. Really, it's about leadership, innovation, and managing the change process, which we all have to be involved in quite well. So in terms of leadership, I think it's about you getting out there and talking to your staff, but also about trying to make the workplace a more friendly environment. A lot of members, for example, are doing charity type events to boost morale. They're doing lunchtime workshops where they're talking through the issues. And really that engagement, the sense that people have control over their destiny, is the most powerful thing that you can give to them. In terms of innovation, the biggest thing I think is to constantly try and improve what you're already doing rather than go out and try the holy grail of brand new products and services. And the way you do that is to go out and talk to your top 10 customers, ask them what you're doing really right, ask them what more you could be doing for them. And by improving their experience, then that will give you your new product, your new service that then you can go and sell to everybody else who's within your books. And in terms of the change management process, I think it's very much around sharpening your focus in this area, being very clear as to what you're trying to achieve, what's the start, what's the end, rather than having a forever ongoing process of change, which is very frustrating in most workplaces. But also try and bear in mind that this recession will end, it always does end, and there's going to be plenty of talent out there that you can snap up at a much lower cost than once would have been the case. So there's going to be certainly a lot of opportunities as well. I just wanted to flag this just before I finish, to bear in mind when you're thinking about employee engagement that people are motivated by different things, and certainly all of the academic work around white collar, blue collar workers shows that it's very different as to what motivates people. In terms of white collar workers, it can be simply saying thank you, well done. It can be giving them interesting work, challenging them, providing opportunities in terms of development, and that is equally as important and much more important in many cases than the paying conditions, which in blue collar workers tend to be much greater priority, that and job security. So it is a time of crisis. The Chinese word implies there's two parts of the equation, opportunity and threat. And it is a little bit about the survival of the fittest, but certainly the companies that are award-winning in our National Small Business Awards really have this model in terms of leadership, innovation and change management right, and that's why I'd encourage you all to put a little bit more focus and thought and time into that going forward. So there are my contact details. Again, at any stage, give me a shout. We're here to help, and I'll do my very best, and my colleagues will as well, to help you with any queries or any issues you may have going forward.